Hello and welcome everybody. I will begin speaking now. Do the presentation. I have half an hour, so I think we need to get started. The presentation I will have today for you is metadata management in the era of artificial intelligence. I'm very thankful that so many people came and will listen to this presentation. So, a bit about me. I'm hearing kind of a... Can I move like this? And is the sound okay? Good. Then it's only in my head. So a bit about me. My name is Ole Olesen-Bagneux. I also go by O2 because my name can be a little difficult to pronounce. I'm the Chief Evangelist in Action, telling the story of the Action Data Intelligence Platform, which has a data catalog in its center. I'm a tech author with substantial industry experience, meaning that I have worked in industry trying to implement technologies for data management and data governance. So I speak from experience, not only as a person that has practiced his ideas inside a software company all of his career. I've written 2 books with O'Reilly. The first book came out in 2023. It's called The Enterprise Data Catalog. And the second one is Fundamentals of Metadata Management that is hot off the press. You can buy it here at the bookshop here in Big Data London. And we also hand out a few copies for certain people in our booth. And you can hear more about that in our booth. Basically, my books are about rethinking data and AI from the perspective of library information science. When I was a young guy, I wanted to become a professor, so I did a BA, MA, and a PhD in library information science. I went into industry, and then I was confronted with many of the data management, data governance technologies, and I thought that they lacked a certain perspective of organizing, structuring data in a way that made data useful, findable, useful, and accessible. So that's me. I also have a podcast called the Enterprise-Wide Search, and I explain our technology in Action through various formats, but the most known one is the Action Explained. So that's me. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Substack, on Medium and Blue Sky, even on Goodreads. So what I will be talking a little bit about today are these 3 things. First of all, I want to dig a little bit into the definition of metadata itself, what it is. And then I want to talk about the reality of metadata management in companies, in enterprises, which is something very different than what most literature tells you and what most software vendors tells you. And then finally, I want to deep dive into a little topic at the end of my presentation, which is ontologies for Model Context Protocol, MCP, which is, I believe, a pretty hot topic. We will spend 5-10 minutes on it at the end of the presentation, and it won't be a technical deep dive. It will be a perspective for you based on my ideas. So that's the talk today. First of all, I think it's quite important to understand what metadata is in the first place. If you look in the Data Management Book of Knowledge or many of the books out there that talks about metadata, they will tell you that metadata is something that you can divide into subcategories of operational metadata, technical metadata, business metadata, and all of that is correct. But the problem with that kind of thinking in metadata management is that it actually misses the very nature of what metadata is. It just lists subcategories. And if we don't catch the real essence of what a phenomenon is, it's hard to manage. And I think we see that in companies. This is perhaps a little academic, but the fact of the matter is that it has quite significant consequences in companies. If we don't capture the real essence of what metadata is, we can't manage it properly. So what I put forward in my book that's just out, Fundamentals of Metadata Management, but in all of my writing on social media, and I'm in my previous books, and all of what I do is that I represent the school of thought that says metadata essentially is something that is in two places at once. And we have to accept the fact that that is the nature of metadata. It can be anything. It can be very technical of nature. It can be very operational in nature, or very business oriented in nature and human language. That is all true. But the nature of it is, as metadata, it's in two places at once. It's at source, with the thing it describes, be it a document, a table, a schema. Whoa, apologies. And in some technology sitting on top, a data catalog, an online bookshop, whatever. So once we define that, we can also address the problem in most companies, which is that we see often a vision that we have one metadata technology reflecting one source or one set of sources. But unfortunately, the reality in companies is not really that. The reality is more like this. We have many metadata repositories, many metadata technologies that represent a select set of the entire IT landscape in a company. That's the reality in companies. Not all software vendors, not much literature, not much advice out there takes this into account. But something really interesting happens if we do. If we accept that reality and talks about that reality instead of preaching a set of principles from theory that's not really applicable in practice, we get something in return. And that's actually pretty useful. So that's the reality of metadata management. That's how I describe it. It's how I think about it. See the slides change a little slowly. So obviously you can't read the letters on the screen, and that's not the intention either. But what this shows you is a list of technologies that all try to represent the IT landscape in a company, in an organization, at the metadata layer. You have enterprise architecture management tools, data catalogs, asset management tools, business process mapping systems, and so forth. And I won't go through all of them, don't worry. But what they allow you to, what this picture allows you to see is that on top of all your IT systems running your company, all your databases running your company, you have a lot of technologies that simply work at the metadata layer. And these technologies typically are maintained by teams that work in isolation from each other in various parts of the business. Methodologies over the last couple of decades, 2, 3, 4 decades, saw the evolution of DevOps, modern software development. But if you go further back in time, you also have ITIL, the IT Infrastructure Library Framework, which really created the entire idea of configuration management databases that also controls and depicts an IT landscape. So many different technologies working in this space, trying to depict the IT landscape, and typically the metadata values that they hold will clash. And that, I think, is the root cause of why many data projects and companies fail, certainly at the metadata level. If you do not accept this reality when you're implementing new technology, you're finding yourself in a bubble, and the reality that you're addressing won't be responding as you desire, simply because it cannot. It's been built in a different way than what you're thinking, and that will become a problem. So understanding this reality, understanding all the technologies that is already in a company, already serving a purpose, already being used by a team, is something that will, I see it personally, as kind of a hidden dimension to succeed with metadata management. And that's why I think it's so important to talk about it, obviously. Now, if we can uncover this, then we can also do something really great for metadata management and subsequently for AI. The thinking that I have been promoting in much of my writing is an architecture that I basically call a metagrid. It's an architecture that works a little bit like data mesh or even older microservices, which are these decentralized architectures that allow you to exploit the metadata in various repositories for analytical purposes. So instead of saying we have analytical data that we need to decentralize, we can also say we have metadata that we need to consider in a decentralized context. So that's what I'm talking about. That's the architecture that I call the metagrid, and I won't go through the details here, but I will leave you with one important lesson is that you should not, when you're doing metadata management, you should not start at the whiteboard. Please do not start at the whiteboard talking to people, to key stakeholders. What are our business processes? What are our applications? What are our information types or data types? That, I can guarantee you, is already listed in a system somewhere in your organization. So don't start at the whiteboard when you're doing metadata management. If you can capture that and blend those types of metadata from the existing repositories in your organization, you get something that is really great and really useful. One of the things that you can do is that you can build a graph. So this is one use case of such an architecture. And what you can do is that you can build if you have a flexible technology like Action's knowledge graph, you can build a graph representing something that is way more powerful than the whiteboard exercise that you normally do, because you have captured the actual metadata values at the metadata layer itself and put that into a graph. You need a flexible technology. You need something with a flexible meta model to be able to do this. And if you do that, you can capture the various domains in a company in this graph in a way that actually represents them, that deeply represents them. So this way of working with a knowledge graph is, I believe, exponentially more powerful, because it's not something that you simply make up while you implement technology. It's something that connects to the existing technologies in your organization. And if you can manage to build such a graph, and I think I will leave 5-10 minutes for questions, so I'll try to wrap this up. If you can build such a metadata graph, which is what we do in Action, then you can use that graph in the era of AI. I don't know to what extent you've heard about Model Context Protocol, but basically what we allow for is to store this graph on an MCP server, meaning that AI applications can consume the context in this graph to carry out the purposes that they are intended to carry out. All of this means that if you apply the right mindset to metadata management, you can build an extremely strong graph in an ontology. You can build an extremely strong ontology in a knowledge graph, in a graph database, and you can put that ontology in an MCP server, meaning that the applications that are carrying out AI tasks will be able to consult this MCP server. And what they can do is that they can increase the precision by which they perform their tasks based on this context. So that's a very, very promising and rich potential for well-crafted graphs at the metadata layer. If you use the empirical reality of your company instead of a whiteboard exercise. I need a little bit of water. Apologies. And so that's something I'm really proud of, helping clients with in action, because it's substantially more strong context than regular whiteboard exercises. Okay, I want to add one thing before we move the slide, and that is that because we have a decentralized architecture in our technology, we're capable of creating subgraphs that only represent distinct domains. This may sound a little data geekish, but what this allows you to do is to create domain-specific graphs saying, if I'm carrying out tasks that are augmented or facilitated by artificial intelligence in, say, marketing or finance, that part of the graph is to be consulted specifically and not the other context that will only blur the tasks. Why is this important? It's important because many of the AI applications that you see out there in the landscape do not work at an enterprise-wide level. They simply don't have the bandwidth to do that. They will deliver poorer results. And so we can provide domain-specific metadata structures for your AI applications, which is pretty unparalleled, actually, if you look on the market in general. So that is what these small symbols represent, that we're capable of delivering domain-specific graphs. And with that, I think it's a wrap. So my main lesson is the reality of metadata management is often ignored in companies. I dare say the vast majority of companies do not understand what metadata management really is. Now that's a hard fact, but you can actually change it quite easily. And you can do that by embracing the reality in your company, understanding that there are already multiple metadata repositories in your company working to depict something at the metadata level to carry out tasks of how you manage your IT landscape. And if you do that, if you capture that totality, you can do a lot of different things with metadata management. And one of those things, only one of them, is that you can build a really strong knowledge graph, an extremely strong knowledge graph. And I say that this with my librarian heart to you, that such an ontology is way stronger than anything that you only build in a meeting room based on drawings on a whiteboard. It's way more solid and it will persist over longer time. And one of the advantages of building such a strong graph is that it can serve as an ontology for AI, using, for example, AI data analysts to answer business questions in technical language and translate it into SQL back into natural language as an answer. And it can do that through Model Context Protocol. But that is just one of the many advantages. And so with that, I think I leave it to questions. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Yeah, well, yeah, you're welcome to. Do you have any questions? Please. Can we get a mic? Just a minute, Lucy. You will get a
Testing.
Hi.
Hi, Lucy.
Where do we start? I know that we have metadata repositories. I want to be able to show the usefulness. I'm going to do a proof of concept. How do I start? How do I show the value of having a metadata catalog to people if I'm only just beginning? How do we get people to invest? What's the first small step I have to take?
Yeah. So I think that in order to get buy-in for a metadata catalog, I think you can show. I have a long list of arguments, especially in my first book, where you would be able to consult arguments pertaining to compliance, For example, the Chief Information Security Officer, the Data Protection Officer, all the elements of compliance that they will be able to do faster because the metadata level allows them to do things that they can't do at the data layer itself. It's more transparent by nature, the metadata layer. But there are also things like analytics that are quite easy to show if you get the chance, of course, to get into the executive room. Also, just want to highlight one last thing here. Emma, the Chief Technology Officer in Action, is doing an excellent presentation on the hidden reasons why AI projects fail. And also, my colleague Jean-Georges Perrin, JGP, is doing a presentation called From Chaos to Clarity, How Data Contracts Turn Governance into a Growth Engine. I wanted to highlight these two excellent presentations coming up also. But we have time for more questions if you... yes.
Thank you. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. I've previously worked with edges and nodes in a network graph for business integrity screening, where we were basically screening business partners. I've two questions basically. How does this differentiate from semantic modeling, or are there parallels in a network graph and semantic models? And two, is there a reference that I could look at? I'm trying to build a few data science projects at work, and there has been talks of knowledge mobilization, which I suppose can be delivered through metadata collection and use. Maybe that's a convoluted question.
I think those are deep questions, but I'm perfectly capable of answering them. I think short answers is that semantic layers can be a lot of things. Perhaps come by our booth to talk in length about it. But what I'm suggesting here is not something that I would necessarily always call a semantic layer. It's more the capturing of a semantic layer that is already out there in the company, stored in various technologies. And for your second question, let's take it at the booth. I think I have more people had some question.
Thank you. Question about federated learning models and how well does your capability...
I simply can't hear the...
So federated learning models and how well does your capability deploy in different environments to allow a federated AI model tapping into the graph instances across enterprises? Have you deployed it like that, or is it only an on-prem in single enterprise deployment?
I'm not sure I follow.
Yeah, perhaps we can take it to. I'll come to your booth, but I'm thinking of outside the enterprise. So if you have three different corporations looking to collaborate in a federated learning AI model, how quickly and have you deployed this capability across multiple entities and then successfully deployed AI?
I have two answers. The first answer is technically that's very possible that we can do that. But my second answer is talk to the gentleman just behind you, because we have setting up an architecture in the Nordics that does exactly that at scale, and I dare say it's quite unique on the world stage. So talk to Peter about it. We have some really, really cool use cases on exactly that. We call it Data Nest. You should talk to Peter.
Yep.
Yes, one more question.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, is there a difference based on the type of the metadata? Like if it's a business metadata or technical metadata, does it still work, your type of model of using the graph? Yeah.
I like that question. I think...
Yo, bro, I'm different.
I believe it would work on all types of metadata. Yes.
Okay.
Short answer, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had to compute that one. Sorry. People are welcome to ask questions, but I think it's also welcome to leave.
Okay.
Hi, Ansi.
Question?
Sorry, your question?
Yeah. Question?
No, it's just friend. It's just my friends.
Sorry, one more. just an open-ended one. Do you have any advice on increasing user adoption once you get a enterprise data catalog set up in a large organization? What kind of users use it, and increasing the adoption? If you have any patterns you've seen in other organizations on that.
So, if I capture this correctly, how do you scale the usage of metadata technologies?
We have a metadata catalog,
Yeah.
and then how to get more people to use it.
Okay, okay. So I think that is a two-sided question in the sense that there's some technological constraints. Certain technologies at the metadata level are not meant to scale. Some data catalogs, unfortunately, the majority are not built to scale because they are basically not graph technologies, which makes them difficult to scale. Then there's also the architecture of the solution. Should everyone enter into the same user interface? That can be a big challenge. And then on the user side, I don't necessarily think a technology should scale. It should scale if you can drive use cases that defend that scalability. So if you can find the use cases that are interesting for the technology, then obviously you can scale it. And that goes into, I think, the best kind of combination I see is a combination of operational, regulatory, and analytics use cases that go hand in hand, really. Like, if you can get all those stakeholders on board at the same time, I see a very beautiful scaling potential in that setup. So I think everyone left before the applause, but I hope I did well. Thank you anyway.